last year and a half or so, we've seen this global meltdown and a lot of loss of confidence has taken place. I'm sorry to say, of people from developing or so-called underdeveloped countries in the West, generally. And it seems going to be a very long time before things come out all right there. We had this M&A of Tata with Chorus. That's a little bit into difficulties because the cost of production there are higher, labor problem, other things. Now this is a very great company which is going to care for the labor and do the right thing and take a lot of loss. We have the MTN deal, the Indian MTN deal, and that I think gives an example of how a geography which is like more underdeveloped like us, or more the vicinity, the area where the markets are better and more easy to carry on with business. So don't you think Asia and Africa are now the places to do business rather than keep looking at the West?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you were living now in Switzerland or in the UK and France, people do look to Asia. They believe that Asia is the future, and a lot of people are slightly morose in Europe, and in America I believe it's even worse because there's a terrible downturn and the terrible crises going on. I personally believe that it's not necessarily a crisis, it's that we were overspending. We were very much overspending, and there was what I was saying at the beginning, that the common sense wasn't there. The liquidity problem in those markets is a handmade, man-made problem, and I don't think it has got anything to do with geography. I believe it's got entirely to do of us, or the Americans and the English not having Mr. Singh as their prime minister. Because the common sense did not prevail. Banks weren't as regulated as they should have been. People's expectations also come in place. People tend to hype up their own prices or their own houses by wanting to have 10% more, 20% more, 30% more, 100% more on a house that maybe was £50,000 5 years ago. You would have to spend like £250,000 today or a year ago. And clearly, it doesn't make any economic sense, the growth, because there wasn't such a growth in capacity, or there wasn't such a growth in the value in the property. There weren't suddenly many more people in that area wanting to buy the house. It was a psychological increase. Therefore, the banks supported schizophrenia, really. That's the only way of describing it. And nobody there to regulate it. Well, now you're not in the spirit of your policymakers. Your policymakers say that you must secure the economy by having an interest in many different places, because effectively volatility can be brought to an average by having interest in many different countries, and therefore there's a protection. Likewise, when you have a portfolio, you wouldn't just want to put all your eggs in one basket. Think of common sense. You would want to have your eggs in many baskets, and therefore that gives you stability. And I think a country in this day and age that their infrastructure you are able to travel from A to B in no time. You can be in America in 10 hours. You can be in Europe in the same amount of time. You can phone somebody. You can do video conferencing. I don't think there is any geographic protection. And if it is handmade or man-made, the geographic protection, as I said, up to the 19 areas of 91, there was disaster. And I think if an economy like India decides to close its doors, then there will be disaster again. And likewise, if the Americans become protectionists, which is there are indications that they want to do this, it will be a disaster. It will be a disaster for the world economy. But in fact, everybody here thinks about it. I was listening to some news yesterday, and they were thinking, well, the liquidity crisis, can that maybe be protected by closing our doors or by protecting ourselves? And clearly, there are a lot of people like yourselves who think, well, we don't need anybody else. Maybe we should just close our doors and keep to ourselves. We've got a big enough market here. We've got enough resources here. But I do not believe it. I believe history has shown you, and I think history certainly has shown us that it doesn't work. And for the sake of world trade and for the sake of prosperity of your children, our children, and the children's children, I think the world has to remain an open marketplace.